For friends, Elior, Kaida, Jaxon, and Thorne had long dreamed of an adventurous camping trip far from civilization. They chose Blackwood Forest, a remote woodland known for its towering pines and uncharted paths. Some locals whispered of the forest being cursed, but the friends dismissed the tales as mere folklore. Arriving at dusk, they pitched their tents beside a cold, crystal-clear stream. As the fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the trees, the group sat around, laughing, sharing stories, and basking in the stillness of the wilderness. But the peaceful atmosphere soon shifted. A low, mournful wail echoed through the trees. It was faint at first, so much so that Elior thought he imagined it. But when it came again, Kaida froze, her eyes widening. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Probably just the wind," Jaxon said, trying to sound casual. But his uneasy glance at the surrounding woods betrayed his nerves. "Or maybe a coyote," Thorne added, though he too appeared shaken. The wailing grew louder, closer. It was not an animal's cry, but something else, something human-like, yet distorted. It reverberated through the trees, sending a shiver down their spines. "Let's just check it out," Elior suggested, standing up. His curiosity often led him into questionable decisions, but the others, reluctant and scared, followed him deeper into the woods. The further they walked, the darker it became. Their flashlights flickered weakly, barely piercing the thick fog that had rolled in, and the wailing grew more persistent. Kaida swore she could hear faint voices murmuring under it, though she couldn't make out the words. "I don't like this," she muttered, gripping Thorne's arm tightly. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an ancient stone well, covered in moss and half buried in the earth. It looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Carved into its stones were strange symbols that none of them could recognize. "What is this?" Jaxon asked, his voice barely audible over the eerie quiet that had replaced the wails. Elior approached it cautiously, peering over the edge. The well seemed impossibly deep, its depths swallowed in darkness. Without warning, a cold gust of wind blew through the trees, extinguishing their flashlights, and the moonlight itself seemed to fade, leaving them in near total darkness. Out of the silence, a soft whisper rose, sounding like many voices at once. "Leave before it's too late." Kaida gasped. "Who said that?" No one answered. The air grew colder, and the feeling of being watched washed over them. A shape began to materialize by the well, faint at first, then more distinct. A translucent figure of a woman, her face twisted in sorrow, her eyes empty voids. "We should go," Thorne said, backing away. But before they could move, the ground beneath them shifted. The forest seemed to come alive, roots and vines reaching out to ensnare their feet. The ghostly figure pointed at them, her voice rising in a shriek that pierced the silence. "You should not have come," she cried, her voice shaking the trees. Panic surged through them, but as they struggled to escape, something even more terrifying happened. Jaxon was the first to fall. His screams echoed through the forest as the ground opened beneath him, swallowing him whole. "No!" Elior yelled, grabbing for Jaxon, but it was too late. Kaida sobbed uncontrollably, trying to pull free of the vines that coiled around her ankles. "We have to leave, now!" As they tried to run, the forest seemed to close in, the trees bending unnaturally, their branches twisting like skeletal arms. Thorne was next. The vines pulled him into the ground, his terrified eyes locking with Elior's before he disappeared into the earth. Now only Elior and Kaida remained, running blindly through the woods. But the wailing followed them, louder and more sinister. The ghostly woman appeared again, her face inches from Elior's. "This forest is not yours," she whispered. "It is theirs. What do you want?" Elior screamed. In answer, Kaida let out a blood-curdling scream as the ground beneath her opened up. She reached out to Elior, but her hands slipped through his fingers as she vanished into the forest floor. Breathing heavily, Elior ran. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs could no longer carry him. But no matter how far he went, the wails and whispers followed. Finally, he stumbled into a clearing, only to find the very same campsite where they had started. The tents were still there, the fire still smoldering as if no time had passed at all. Confused and terrified, Elior collapsed by the fire, trying to catch his breath. But as he looked around, something horrifying struck him. There, sitting around the fire, were Kaida, Jaxon, and Thorne, staring into the flames in eerie silence. They looked the same as before, but something was wrong. Their eyes were vacant, their faces expressionless. Elior's heart pounded in his chest. He approached them cautiously. "Guys," they didn't move. "Guys," he repeated, louder this time. Suddenly, they all turned their heads toward him in unison, their faces cold, emotionless masks. "You should have never come here," they said in perfect harmony, their voices blending into one. A cold, dead hand gripped his shoulder from behind. Elior turned slowly, and there she was, the ghostly woman, her face twisted into a wicked grin. "You're one of us now." Before he could scream, everything went black. When a search party arrived weeks later, they found no trace of the four friends, only a silent, untouched campsite beside a cold stream. The tents were still there, the fire long extinguished. But no one would ever find Elior, Kaida, Jaxon, or Thorne. The forest had claimed them, as it always had for centuries. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on any updates. Your support helps me bring more exciting and fun videos to the channel.